Hey everybody, welcome to the Give Them Glitter podcast. My name is Joshua.
And I'm Leslie.
And we are so glad you're here. Thanks for giving us a little bit of your time today. If you are new, I want to give a special welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoy the show. We are a podcast about raising emotionally healthy kids and all that goes with that. We are not experts.
Nope.
We're just parents sharing our journey and would love to be a part of your journey. So thank you for being here and enjoy the show.
And if you're joining us again, welcome back. Thank you for being a part of the GTG community. We love having you guys, and we really appreciate your support.
Absolutely. So, the last episode, we were throwing down some hot takes.
Hot takes.
Some hot takes. We've really appreciated your engagement. Gotten a lot of engagement with that episode in different ways across social media and stuff. So we love seeing that. We love hearing from you guys as well, and would love to hear from you with anything in these episodes. So at any point, if you're listening, especially on YouTube, feel free to drop a comment. Let us know your thoughts. And actually something new that Spotify just did. They changed up their episodes a little bit where you can now drop a comment in an episode. So we would love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment on there. And yeah, we would love to hear from you, but we thought it would be important and good to go ahead and have a follow-up conversation around the idea of gender norms.
Yes.
The idea of boys in dresses, girls in jeans, and everything that goes with that, especially in today's society.
Yes.
That's something it seems like a lot of parents are wanting to have conversations about. We definitely want to have a conversation about. This is kind of a really big motivator for us with the podcast.
Yes, it is.
So let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's waste no time pissing people off here. And let's start out with, you really wanted to spend a little time talking about some of the historical context in that, and just about how have historically gender norms shifted over time, specifically when it comes to things like makeup and clothing, even nail polish with men.
Yes. So in my research, I'm a big research nerd. Anybody who knows me well knows I love a research project. And I was curious to know what the historical I mean, I knew a little bit about it, but I wanted to know for real what the historical context was around makeup and clothes and things like that. So, of course, I knew that makeup had been around for thousands of years, right? Like, and in my research, that was confirmed. Ancient Egyptians were wearing makeup. The creating makeup used things like coal and stuff to line their eyes, or I forget what they used to create lipstick, but they had a version of lipstick that they would use, and men and women used it both. Like, it wasn't a gendered thing. Sometimes it was a class-based thing. So if you were more wealthy, you tended to wear more makeup than if you weren't.
You'll probably get into this, but I feel like historically, makeup and class has really gone hand in hand more than makeup and gender.
It's true. Yes, exactly. And that was how it was for thousands of years up until really the 19th century. So you have a few different periods of time where, hundreds of years ago, a few hundred years ago, men were wearing makeup. They would wear, terrible idea, but they would use arsenic powder to make their faces. Yeah, let's poison ourselves.
Yeah.
But
that was probably the same time as they're let's take a dump in a bucket and throw it out the window down the street in Europe.
Yeah. Not great.
Not great hygiene.
The greatest ideas all the time. But yeah, men and women alike would wear makeup. They would powder their faces. They would use different products to create red lips or rosy cheeks.
We know native cultures here in the North American continent, they used makeup as well. Different face paints and things of that nature.
It was across cultures. There were European cultures who wore makeup, obviously, who wore wigs and things like that. There were Asian cultures that wore makeup. a lot of it was to, make your face look lighter because lighter complexions were always seen as, I mean, that's a big shocker, but lighter complexions were always seen as, more attractive or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and that's especially in a post-colonial world, a
Yes. Well, yeah.
post-colonized world. But I'm even thinking too, like you could almost pick a region of the world, go back, rewind few hundred, few thousand years, you're going to see a local people, even if it's more tribal, they're going to use makeup. They're going to use that kind of stuff and dressing up, whether it's for events, for festivals, for things of that nature.
Or to distinguish yourself from another people group.
Yeah, exactly. And so kind of the idea of essentially painting your face, which really is in a lot of ways what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what makeup
most
is.
fundamentally with makeup. Like that's been pretty global in just used in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can pinpoint and say, well, makeup's always just been a feminine thing.
No, it hasn't. It wasn't until really, so in terms of clothing, the Renaissance was when more gendered clothing started to appear, at least in Europe. But there have been cultures like, in my research, I found kilts, for Scottish people. I know Japanese culture. I cannot remember all the names, so nobody come for me about all the names of the different cultures and their different traditional dress. But I know Japanese cultures have there are men who wear these specific kinds of robes. There have been a variety of cultures where there isn't as much of a distinguishing factor between women's clothing and men's clothing, really until in Europe it was the Renaissance. So that was when you started to really have a divide between men and women's clothing, as men started to be like, we want to be seen as intellectual, the women stay home, the men get educated, let's, divide the genders and such, whatever. And then you had, in terms of, and fun fact, which a viewer on YouTube also pointed out, but was confirmed in my research, high heels were invented by men for riding horses. It was to stabilize yourself on the horse. And then men
and maybe to appear a little taller.
Yes, men in Europe.
And men still do that. Shout out to Ron DeSantis, your failed political campaign with your high heel boots. So men still do that.
They still do. And they're I don't have an issue with men wearing heels. The DeSantis crowd is the people who have go ahead, honey, live your best life. And so there really wasn't as much of a distinguishing factor. It was a lot more class-based. Makeup and clothing and how decorative it was a lot more class-based up until the Renaissance. Then you saw much more gendered clothing where you started to distinguish between men and women in the difference between garments and stuff. And then you have the 19th century. And of course, religion had an impact.
What?
Particularly Roman Catholicism had an impact on how women should be distinguished from men in their dress. And then you get the 19th.
Question.
Yeah.
Have we ever seen a pope in jeans?
Right. I've never seen a pope's legs. Not in jeans, not in pants, nothing. They're always in robes.
They wear really nice, expensive nightgowns.
Yes. I'm sure they have some kind of pant, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's free flowing.
I've never been a pope, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they wear under there. Not my business. And then you see, of course, colonialism brought along even more traditional and more gendered stereotypes. And then you have the Industrial Revolution really launched it into what we have today.
Yes.
Where it became, the industrial World War II is around where women started wearing pants, or World War I, World War II.
Well, wouldn't it been in really both the world wars? I know a big thing in that women entering the workplace because men left and went to war. Yep. And so they would dress like they're going to the factory.
Yes. And so that's when women
working, an 8-hour day for 2 cents.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Exactly. That's where women started wearing pants. But then you had the 1950s ushered in these uber traditional gender roles where women are supposed to wear a certain thing. Nail polish is for them, makeup is for them, heels are for them, and men wear suits, jeans, blah, blah, blah. And that's how we have it today, where that's the expectation.
And there's a lot to even in just diamonds. Diamonds are great examples. Like the famous De Beers campaign where it was the 30s or the 40s when they really pushed that idea of getting your wife a diamond ring before marriage as part of a proposal. That was not something that existed before that. I have a feeling, I didn't do the deep dive on research like you did. I don't know if you came across this, but probably in that same time, there was an element too of very specific marketing to makeup is for women.
Yeah, that really
being
started
put
around,
together, having your hair done, the housewife in the kitchen type of situation.
It was really around the 1900s ish, like early 1900s up to the 1950s, when marketing really started to pick up into participating in the normalization of traditional gender roles.
Even if you think back to the Roman Empire, all the imagery you see from them is kind of, I don't know what they were necessarily called, but like those kind of Roman skirts, tunics, if you will. There you go, tunics. Then there's been, I think as long as there has been a court system in the West, judges have always worn robes. Even in the UK today, judges still wear powdered wigs. It was a big deal to do your makeup back then as a man and go out into public. So I don't know. Some of that stuff is just, I don't know how necessarily robes become a distinguishing thing in the judiciary system. There's clearly elements that are driven by just geographic region, like hotter areas historically have less genes.
Well, Middle Eastern culture, like in my research, Middle Eastern cultures had that men tend to wear, which is still true now. Men tend to wear like longer, they're lighter weight. So I wouldn't call them a robe per se, but they're like a more tunic style, linen-y type dress-ish. I know, please don't come for me, Middle Eastern people. Like, I don't know what the technical term is, but dress type garb.
Well, just that more flowy, airy, because it's hot.
Yeah. And so like, and that's the thing.
I've considered just getting rid of all of my pants and exclusively wearing tunics.
Yeah.
Here in Houston, because it's hot as a bitch here.
Yeah.
Jeans and pants don't do it here.
It's like 1,000 degrees outside. Yeah. So long story short, the Renaissance brought about, like, that's when you started to see men shortening their tunics to distinguish themselves from the ladies. There's always been a lot of class element in dress, more than there was gender for most of human history. As hunter-gatherers, hunter-gatherer societies were a lot more egalitarian. Men and women hunted and gathered. And then you had, as you started to get agriculture, that's when patriarchy came into the picture. And then it evolved, and you have like Renaissance, bam, that's where clothing changed. And then you have, 19th century, bam, gender roles. And then you have industrialization, bam, more traditional gender roles.
Yeah. And then kind of our next question here is, how do different cultures approach gender norms related to these things? Clearly, your geographic locale has a lot to do with it, because that's going to drive more than anything, your climate to that kind of stuff. And so if you're in a colder climate, you're going to wear more clothes. I always marvel at like Old English, like how much fucking clothes they
like
wore.
Bridgerton.
Yes, any period piece like that. I'm just like, golly, it
took 99 years just to get dressed.
I know.
To leave the house.
Got to wear like 5 layers as a man just to go on a walk. And that is very much driven by the fact that it's a cooler climate there. And it wasn't always crazy hot like it is here in the South. But those other places wear lighter clothes. And that's just always been true, where your geographic locale drives a lot of your fashion.
Yes.
Because especially before the invention of AC. God bless the person who invented that.
Truly.
And before that, like, you just had to stay cool or you had to stay warm.
Mm-hmm.
And that drove a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other element of that too, is we touched on this a little bit as well, just the cultural norms, cultural practices,
Yeah.
like not just what was expected and accepted, but kind of cultural heritage.
Mm-hmm.
What festivals you have, how you dress up for those festivals. Even, a example of this I think of is in Japan, and forgive me, I forget the specific name of this, but it's that practice where the women will have the very white faces. Geisha, that's right. That's a very localized thing that's specific to Japanese culture, Japanese heritage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that is a driving force behind things, rather than it being makeup is for women.
Yeah, and that's what I discovered in my research. It really depended on the culture you were in. Even something like the Scottish kilt, like a lot of that was distinguished. I mean, I know like different clans had their specific tartan plaid that was specific to their family or their region of Scotland or whatever. And it was similar across other cultures where it's like men and women's clothing wasn't as distinguished from men and women as it was like from other people groups or other tribes, clans, people groups within their same region. And then also with the weather.
Yeah. It's really fascinating how we went from those things being driven by truly just your weather and those kind of, maybe tribal is not the correct word, but those like identifiers, those kind of tribal type identifiers, those people group identifiers, and that being what drove that stuff, to now it's evolved into like, no, dresses are for girls.
Yeah.
Boys cannot wear them. Like, that is like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah. And it's really only been in the last like 200 to 300 years that's been super hardcore. And even with the makeup, it's only been in like the last 100 years that's been super hardcore.
Even that. And I think with the dress part of it, if it's been a few hundred years, there's plenty of old pictures, especially babies. Babies, boy or girl, would oftentimes wear dresses. Probably just because it was an easy way, especially pre-air conditioning, to keep them cool.
Yeah, and to change their diaper.
Yeah, and to change their diaper and for them to have freedom of movement. And so clothes for a long, long time have been, I think, predominantly a function of, or a product of functionality.
Yes.
There's also the class element of that, being wealthy, being not wealthy. That's always a factor in those type of things. And then there has always been a piece of self-expression within that as well. I do think in today's more modern world, I think you could make the argument. I'm not saying this is factual, obviously not a historian here, but I think you could make the case that there is more of an element of self-expression in clothes now than maybe historically there has been in the past.
Yeah.
Especially now that we live in a day and age where almost no one makes their clothes unless they're literally a fashion designer.
Yeah.
We all go to the store, we all have options, we all buy clothes. I don't think there's ever been a time like that in human history where there's been such a broad option in how you express yourself, the type of clothes you can buy, and the fact that we all go and buy clothes in that way, because people used to make their clothes.
Yeah. Well, even something like clothes having color was a class-based thing.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Dyes were really expensive. They weren't, for a long time, they weren't synthesized. So you had to like have plant dyes.
Yeah.
People had to make those. And then it was really expensive to have colorful fabrics. So you had to be wealthy to have colorful clothing. And then if you were of a lower class, your clothing was typically neutral in tone, brown, whatever. So there wasn't as much self-expression you could do with like tan beige clothing.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of historical complexity to it. It's not black and white. It's not doesn't fit into neat little gender boxes. There's just so many factors, so many nuanced things in that.
Mm-hmm.
The next question here is how, as parents, we can encourage our kids to explore these areas of self-expression, really, without labeling and stamping traditional gender norms on these things.
Yeah.
I think off the top, one way you can do that is just allowing them to wear what they like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have a kind of like the title of our last episode, and maybe even be the title of this episode, if you've got a girl who likes to wear jeans, maybe she doesn't like to wear dresses. Maybe she likes shorts more than dresses. And there's plenty of girls who like that, who prefer shorts over dresses. Okay, we'll just let her do that.
Let her do that.
If you got a little boy who likes dresses over shorts or over jeans or t-shirts, let him do that. Like, it's at the end of the day, like I was saying earlier, clothes have evolved now into a lot more of a self-expression, a form of self-expression. Yeah. And so just let them do that, because we talk about this a lot on this podcast, is your kids are learning who they are.
Yeah.
And we as the parents, we are also learning who they are.
Yes.
And so let them learn, let them explore, and support that self-exploration.
Yeah, I mean, clothing, we all have to wear clothing, right? Like, there's really not a society, I mean, unless you belong to a nudist colony, there's really not, and I don't think
you just had to throw that one out there, didn't you?
Sorry. I mean, there's some, like.
They're out there, I guess.
They're out there. They are. I'm sure.
Shout out to the nudists who are listening.
Yes.
I don't. We're glad you're listening too.
I guess. More power to you, I guess.
They're not even bound by clothes. They don't even know why people are arguing about this.
They're like, just go naked. Who cares? God. But if you wear clothes, we all like have to wear something, and that's all that clothes are, is something to wear. And so like people are gonna find various things comfortable to wear, and kids are the same. Like, some grown adults don't like wearing dresses or don't like wearing pants. I've met women who don't like pants. They don't like the feeling. They don't like the sensation, and maybe it's too heavy or it's too restrictive or whatever the case may be. I've met women who hate wearing dresses, who would far and away rather be in shorts and pants because it's easier to do whatever, from their perspective. And kids are the same. Like, as a kid myself, I had female friends who were not into dresses or makeup or nail polish. They would much rather be in jeans so they could run and play and all that kind of stuff without worrying about ripping their dress or getting it dirty or whatever the case may be. And I remember them lamenting about their mom wanting them to wear a dress for whatever. It was picture day, and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to wear this stupid thing. And it was, back then, I didn't really meet any boys who wore dresses, but.
That's an interesting idea to unpack for a second. So this, say, picture day at school. We'll just use that as an example. Typically for the younger kids, usually mom or dad, is getting them dressed, going to make them look all cute and whatever for picture day. Well, if you're a kid and you don't want to wear the dress to picture day, or maybe you do want to wear the dress to picture day, right? Like, I'm just like, man, why not? Why does it have to be a battle, I guess?
Yeah.
Is the thing. I understand there are things where there's a specific context, right, for it, a more appropriate type of clothing. So if you're not gonna put a kid, boy or girl, in, maybe they love big spinny flowy type of a dress. You're going to the playground. Okay, that's not really the context for that. So I think there's an element of teaching your kids this context begets this type of clothing in a way. But I also think there's a lot of situations where maybe we've had it in our mind, like, this is what you wear, this is what you wear for picture day at school,
Mm.
for Easter Sunday at church.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful with that one.
Oh gosh.
This is what you wear to like a more formal event type of
Mhm.
thing. And I just think there's a lot of people who are, people meaning there's a lot of adults now who are challenging in a healthy way, I think, kind of, you know, what does true formality
Yeah.
look like? What is truly appropriate
Mm-hmm.
for this context?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we have to adhere to those norms. And there's plenty of things that you can look formal
Mm-hmm.
without looking traditional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there are so many different ways to look formal without looking traditional. How many there's, and even in what would be considered maybe more traditional clothing, for example, I see men all the time on Instagram who will show you, here's like 10 different ways in this video to use a blazer.
Mm-hmm.
From looking really formal to using a blazer that could be the same blazer to look more casual,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so clothes are really like that tool to kind of self-express
Yeah.
and fit the moment. But I just feel like a lot of what it was, this is traditionally how you dress for this or that or this context, like those norms, I just feel like a lot of those norms they're having a hard time holding on.
Yeah. Well, even something like formal occasions. I mean, 20 years ago, if you were a woman going to any formal occasion, wedding, a gala, whatever the case may be,
Absolutely.
you were expected to be in a gown.
Gown, high heels.
Yep. And now I see women, even on the red carpet at celebrity award shows or whatever the case may be, but like, you know, different weddings and stuff, women are wearing suits. They're wearing, you know, they'll wear a blazer.
Well, any political
Mm-hmm.
leader who's a woman, you almost never see her in a gown.
No.
And that's normal,
Mm-hmm.
right? It would almost be odd if you saw a female world political leader in a gown.
Or like a sundress.
Yeah, you expect it more maybe from like a first lady.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, take someone like Kamala Harris. Like she, to look professional, wears, you know, pantsuits,
Yeah.
blazers. Even I know, like, I think Italy has a new female prime minister. She does the same thing. And so, yeah, there's just, that stuff is just so, it's always been so fluid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were watching Bridgerton the other day, and one of the characters was out on a walk and in like a huge fucking dress, corset, heels, hat, everything. I'm like, God damn, they had to like get done like that just to go on a walk?
Yeah.
Just to leave the house and walk in the sun?
Hell no.
And so, because that's what was socially accepted,
That was
right?
what
And
was
so
expected.
that stuff changes.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff has always been fluid.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, of course it's going to change now.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it's going to be changing today.
Yeah. And so to hold kids today to a standard from like 30 years ago, or even us holding our kids to a standard from when we were kids is like ridiculous.
Even generations don't hold the same standards.
No.
You know, like older generations, they're like, you're going to an interview, you better wear that suit and tie and look good and look sharp, button up. And
Well, it's like the interviews.
Gen Z,
No, Gen Z may not even show up to the interview.
I don't know if Gen Z owns a button up.
Yeah. No.
They probably do, but they're like, why would you tuck it?
Why would you button it?
Why would you button it and tuck it?
But it's like, even I recently got a new job. I was interviewing, and like the people interviewing me were in t-shirts. Like there was no professional dress. I mean, because it's remote work. So even with that, it's like professionalism has changed. I mean, there are people who have like blue and purple hair in my workplace, and in several workplaces I've worked, there are people who are covered in tattoos and things like that. Even that stuff, professional dress has changed. Like, you know, you can wear a t-shirt to the office now. You can wear jeans to work. You can show your tattoos. Even like back in the day, I worked at Starbucks, and back then you weren't allowed to show your tattoos. You had to cover them up. I didn't have any at the time, so it wasn't my problem, but you couldn't show them. Now people work at Starbucks, you can show them off. And so that's a company that's been around a long time, since the 90s. And even that has changed in the 10 years since.
I feel like it's actually preferred at Starbucks now.
Yeah,
that you
now
have
it's like,
tattoos.
are you even a barista if you don't have a tattoo?
How do you know how to make coffee if you don't have tattoos?
Yes, like
No tattoos, no piercings.
no beanie. What?
What? Have
Get
you
out.
ever had coffee?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and so it's like,
And that's just, to your point, that was when you were in college. That's not that long ago that there's been a pretty big shift in even what you perceive as a barista. Right? And so that all of that stuff is just so fluid, and it's so much more based now in expression, even in more traditional ways. Like if your kid maybe dresses more traditional to their gender, they're still going to pick clothes based on their preference.
yeah.
They're still gonna, pick that shirt that's got Sonic on it, or that's got the animals on it, or that's their favorite color. Same thing with, if you have a little girl who she loves to wear dresses, she's going to wear those dresses that are a preference. So even within the norms, it's still preference based.
Yeah. But then you even have kids who are like, which this could be a whole nother video, but you have kids who are like on the autism spectrum who are very particular about what they wear. They may want to wear like a Batman costume 7 days a week, which I've seen before. And it's like, who's to say that they're wrong just because that's what they're comfortable in? If they're not harming anybody, they're not exposing something inappropriate. Like, who's to say that that's inappropriate or wrong?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at there is the crux of it. Like, who says that's wrong? Who gets to say that what your kid does or doesn't wear is wrong?
Yeah.
Is it you? Is it the church? Is it the government? Who gets to say, no, that's wrong?
Yeah. Like, why is the government, and I'm not a small government type of person, y'all, so don't even come at me with that. But like, why should the government get to dictate what anybody wears? Like,
I don't know.
Why? It goes back to what we said in the previous video of like, if it's not harming you, why do you care? Like, women wear pants. Is a woman wearing pants hurting you? No. So why does it harm your life? Does it impact your life? No. So who cares?
Yeah. But beyond just clothes, when it comes to things like makeup, when it comes to things like nails, like if it doesn't affect you, then who cares what you think?
And history, that's why I wanted to do a deep dive on the history, because the history supports it. Men wore nail polish. It wasn't nail polish as it's known today, but they had dyes that they would use to dye their fingernails. And it was like seen as like, if you were rich and you're a rich man, you dyed your fingernails red or pink or whatever to signify that you were of an upper class. You didn't have to get your hands dirty. You didn't have to like work the field or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, so a few hundred years ago, men were wearing nail polish and makeup, but now it's wrong.
Yeah. And I can think of just countless examples where men, even in traditionally expressing contexts, have used those things. One example is for a long, long time in baseball, whoever is playing catcher, sometimes they would wear nail polish because they will use their fingers to communicate with the pitcher on what to throw. And that would help the pitcher, see kind of what number of fingers they're holding up to like know what kind of pitch. That's been in baseball for a long time. And those are bros playing baseball.
Don't even get me started.
But take TV. People on TV have makeup on all the time.
Yeah. Men, I mean, if y'all think your favorite male actors, like, I don't know, he's not the greatest actor out there, but I am a fan. John Cena or whoever, like your manly actors, like The Rock and whoever, they're wearing makeup in the movies. In those action scenes in Fast and the Furious 2000, or whatever number they're on, they're wearing makeup. Like they got makeup on. It's intentionally done so you don't notice it, but they're wearing makeup. All of those actors, your stage actors, wear makeup. If you are a performer, even your like musicians and stuff. I guarantee you Justin Timberlake and these types of people are wearing makeup. Even if they sweat it off on stage, they're wearing makeup.
Yeah. First of all, shade to John Cena.
I know. I like John Cena, so if John Cena ever sees this, please don't take it offense. He probably won't, but in case he ever does, I am a fan.
You just assured he'll never come on the podcast with that.
Well, he'd have to. Yeah.
But you throwing John Cena under the bus aside, one thing I was going to say, we've talked about this before, Old English, they didn't let women in the theater.
Yeah.
So if there was a female character in a play,
it was a dude.
It was a dude.
And he wore a dress and makeup.
Yeah. So just let your kids express themselves. And I think really what it comes down to is this just learning them, like we mentioned, but also just being supportive, being a safe place for them. I mean, what I think about all the time is obviously there's going to come a day when, especially for ours, that he's not as traditional. Mm-hmm. There's going to come a day he's going to go out in public. Maybe not. Hopefully the world changes a lot between now and then, and it is.
So. Yeah.
But there's going to be spaces where he's not necessarily as safe. He's going to reach an age where he's aware of people looking at him, things of that nature. He may even have people say stuff directly to him. But at the end of the day, his home, whether that's with us or when he's living on his own, home should be
safe. Should be safe.
Home should be a safe place where love and acceptance is, where you can find that.
Yes.
In endless abundance.
Yes. And also, let's divorce how someone dresses from their sexuality and their gender or their sex. Like, just because if you have a kid who dresses non-traditionally for their gender, their sex, whatever, that doesn't mean that they will identify one way, any type of way, right? Like, depending on the age of your child, they don't even have a sexuality yet. Like, haven't hit puberty, they don't have a sexuality. Mm-hmm. Like, they're just a child liking what they like. And you're the one kind of giving that first line of approval on what they like.
Yeah, adults are the ones that sexualize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, adults historically have been the ones to sexualize kids.
Yes.
Kids don't do that.
No, kids are not sexualizing each other.
No, adults do it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, just to your point, just remove the sexualization of it and just let a dress be an expression. Just let nails be an expression. Just let the makeup piece be an expression. Because, I mean, even as adults, and in so many contexts, I would say an overwhelming majority of contexts, that's all it really is. It's just a self-expression.
Yeah, it's just self-expression.
So the last point here, and I think we've kind of touched on this, but I will just read it out here because these will also be made available on Instagram as well. So we would love for you to comment on there which of these stuck out to you. But how do societal expectations around makeup, nails, clothing, things like that, impact the mental health and self-esteem of individuals, and particularly those who do not conform to traditional gender norms? I think obviously when people who don't express themselves in ways, again, who gets to say, but when people are telling them, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're a sinner, you're, a threat to kids, like people like to say about drag queens now, when they're always doing that kind of stuff, that's just so dehumanizing.
Yes.
Because you've reduced them to nothing more than the clothes that they are wearing.
Yes.
And that is just, that's just bullshit. It's complete bullshit. And it's really a way that is no different than purity culture in Christian circles, where you reduce women to nothing more than what clothes they are not wearing. And you make, men's reaction to that their responsibility for what they're wearing, well, that's dehumanizing.
Mm-hmm.
That's reducing them
Mm-hmm.
down to nothing more than clothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's making, again, that's sexualizing something that doesn't need to be sexualized.
Yeah.
Like, let's just focus on men, not over sexualizing everything.
Yeah. Everything is not about sex, you guys.
Calm down, bro.
Yes. Like, if men learn nothing else, like, to contribute to the dismantling of patriarchy, not everything is about sex. I know a lot of men like sex. So do a lot of women. So do a lot of people. But not everything is about sex.
No, and it doesn't have to be. But it's, yeah, there's a lot there. We could keep going on and on
But
there, but
it does impact your health. If you're, and we've seen this a little bit with our own kid, which I don't want to tell all of his business, but like, where I can tell when he can feel that someone else is uncomfortable with the way that he's expressing himself.
yes.
Like, he may not be able to put it into words, but I can tell when he can feel that discomfort. And right now it's, we limit the situations in which he has to be made uncomfortable by someone else's discomfort. We won't always be able to do that, but that's why we do this. That's why we have these conversations, because I don't ever want him to be in a place where
Podcast. That's why we want to make these conversations broader and bring more people into this.
Yes, because I don't ever want him or anybody else's child who expresses themselves in a way that's non-traditional. I don't want their mental health to suffer, right? Like, kids
don't want them to feel less than.
Yeah,
for no reason.
They should not have to feel like they're not as good as anybody else, any of their peers, just because they dress how they want to dress. Like, we've seen the tragic effects that can happen when you other kids like that. When you
children.
Yes, children. Like, why? Oh my gosh, that's such a fucking, like, I sometimes don't even have the words for it, because it makes me so angry as a mother when I see these stories of kids who, aren't here anymore because they were so bullied or so looked down upon by their own family or by peers at school or whatever the case may be. They were made to feel less than for so long that now they're no longer here. And that is 100% preventable.
It is, because it is 100% learned.
Yes.
It is so learned to other someone, to tear them down, to make them feel less than. That is a learned behavior. Yes. That is not something kids naturally do. You can see little kids play and they don't do that. They don't exhibit that type of behavior. I can give you a really great example where in our neighborhood, our kids, and you had gone over with them to a neighborhood friend's home. One of our boys was wearing a dress at the time. Now, I'm not speaking for the kids, but we do know the parents of the kids, and they are much more traditional, right? But while they were over there, ours, who was wearing a dress, none of those kids of the more traditional parents had an issue with it. Because, well, why? Okay, cool. You wear a dress, whatever. Cool.
Yeah.
That's what you want to wear. And oftentimes that's just how kids operate. Like, okay, cool. That's your thing. They like what they like. Their friends like what they like. They find out what they like together. And that's just how kids' worlds operate.
Yeah.
And we just, as a society, we need to be a lot more like kids in that regard.
Yes.
Where we just let people like what they like and just leave it at that. Like, it doesn't have to be anything other than that. And when it becomes more than that, especially when you see it in a school context, where you see bullying, where you see this stuff online, that is all learned. Those kids have been taught,
yes,
whether it's from their parents or whether it's from other friends, whether it's from online, they have been taught to be hateful.
Yes. Hate and intolerance is 100% taught. Nobody comes out hateful.
No, kids are just the sweetest thing. And, ours that wears the non-traditional clothes. He's just the sweetest bundle of joy and kindness and sunshine. And he radiates that. And other kids, you know,
and other adults who are accepting also comment on that.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that's an important element to this, is whether it's the demonizing of it, that is absolutely taught. And it's something that you have to learn. It's something you have to be taught. And so let's just be a generation as parents who don't teach that. Let's teach the other way. Let's teach the way of love, kindness, acceptance. Like we say, if it has no bearing on your life, then, especially if it has no bearing on your life and what they're doing, they're not harming themselves, they're not harming anyone, like, then what does it really matter? Like, what does your opinion matter about it? And what does it matter at all other than their own self-expression? Yeah. So, yeah. So let's just be different as parents. That's what really, truly a big motivator, maybe the biggest motivator for us in this podcast, is just building up that community that says we're going to do it a different way. We're just going to love. We're going to accept. We're going to be kind. We're going to be kind. And that's what we're going to put out into our family units. That's what we're going to put out into the world. So I think that's a much better way. I think there's a lot of people, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people who don't want that. There's a lot of people who want conformity for control's sake and power's sake over that. But I think there's a lot more of us who don't want that, who want the world to just be about kindness.
Acceptance, yeah. Because everybody wins. That's the thing. It's like the people who want conformity, they're the only ones that win from their model of life. But from our model of life, where everybody's accepted, everybody's included, everybody wins, even those people.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go. Part 2, boys in dresses, girls in jeans. Thank you guys for watching. Again, we would absolutely love to hear from you on this topic. We want to hear what you think. If you watched on YouTube, drop a comment. If you are listening or watching on Spotify, there's also now a new comment section. We would love to have your comment there. Also, if you are watching on Spotify or Apple Podcast, it would mean the world to us if you would leave a 5-star review on there. That is really the best way to tell the algorithms to get this podcast out to other people who want to be part of this community, want to be part of that parenting coalition that is going to just put out goodness, put out love, put out kindness into the world. So be sure to leave a 5-star review for us there. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We would love for you to be part of the GTG community that way.
Yes, and as always, if your kids are safe and they know and feel that they are loved, you're doing the damn thing.
Thank you guys for listening. We love you, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.